Infidelity, sexual compulsions, disconnection, and fear of intimacy. These can all be classified as intimacy disorders. Infidelity, sexual compulsions, disconnection, and fear of intimacy. These can all be classified as what I call intimacy disorders. And in today's episode of Trigger Proof, and I intend on sharing with you my story, my truths, getting vulnerable, and helping you overcome one of the most greatest epidemics that I've discovered in my 18-year chiropractic practice. Welcome. My name is Dr. Nima Rahmany, and you are watching Trigger Proof. We're here in episode 8 and we're live. We have dogs here, we have tech issues, we have a hot studio, so we never know what's gonna happen. That's what kind of makes it exciting. And I've been a chiropractor for the last 18 years, and I discovered that most people coming in to see me were dealing with stress-related disorders. And when we went upstream and started to inquire, it usually had to do with relationship breakdowns. And when we went upstream to inquire, we discovered it usually had something to do with disconnection from self and purpose. So most of the times when these breakdowns would happen in relationships, whether it be infidelity, sexual issues, it was usually a disconnection from intimacy. And it wasn't until I went in, going through divorce, relationship breakdown, career transition, it forced me to look deeply at myself and to upgrade myself with intimacy, with something that I had no idea about because I really wasn't taught. I didn't have amazing role models about it. And as I started to do the work and to expand on my inner work of myself, I discovered that most people coming in to see me were dealing with the same thing. And it was basically one cause, one cure, disconnection from self. And so I put together a program, and I love sharing this story. I love sharing the journey to help people who are struggling with relationship limbo, with career limbo, disconnection from self, which then, if you don't get that right, will then show up and manifest as health problems. So I'd like to welcome you, and I do want to say, please don't hesitate, interact, share any questions that you have. We're live right now, and if you're watching on replay, don't hesitate to ask any questions and make it as interactive as possible, because my intention today is to give you the tools necessary to have basically what it is that we all want. We all want to feel connected in relationships. We want to feel like we are seen and heard and understood. We also want to feel like we're making a contribution, not only to other people's lives, but to be able to help solve our own problems and our own lives as well. And so we can't do that when we're disconnected from ourselves. Usually what's in the way is anxiety. Usually what's in the way is past resentments. Usually what's in the way is fear of actually being connected to another, fear of actually being known, fear of being seen, fear of being heard. And so on one hand, it's a real big paradox, because on one hand, we have this deep desire to feel seen and heard, and on the other hand, we're terrified of it. So welcome to the paradox of relationship challenges. And when you actually don't get this part right, divorce happens. Sexual addictions, which I really, speaking with a neurobiology professor recently, Dr. Jim Faust, he kind of corrected me. He said there's no real such thing as a sexual addiction, it's just a compulsion. So you'll have a compulsion towards sex, and I know what that's like. And actually what that is, what I've discovered, is that all of these problems are an intimacy disorder. So let me know if any of this sounds familiar to you. You have a fear of intimacy, a fear of expressing your emotional truth, because if you don't say the right thing, you're going to feel rejected. So you block that. Fear of revealing these deep feelings, because probably when you grew up, revealing deep feelings, your parents did not have the tools of intimacy So when your feelings would show up, they didn't know what the heck to do with them. So they would either stuff them down, make you wrong about them. Let me know if this at all rings a bell for you. You might also, fear of intimacy will show up as a fear or a blockage of actually showing concern for your partner's feelings. Like if you're disconnected from your own feelings, when your partner or somebody that you care about is emoting, sharing their emotions, you have a kind of a blockage of even showing concern because you're so dissociated from your own feelings. And a fear of commitment to a long-term relationship. Now, I know what that's like. And fear of sharing your actual wants and needs, and fear of trusting in the relationship. Now, in my situation growing up, it was very obvious at the age of 2 where my separation trauma showed up. I shared this on previous episodes. When I was 2 years old, when my twin brother and I were 2 years old, my parents were exploring immigrating to Canada. And because my twin brother was a more challenging twin, my mother decided to leave me with my grandparents while she went to Canada with my twin brother to explore immigrating. And so I, at the age of 2, dealt with the separation trauma and a break in the mother bond. And the way that that showed up was a disconnection, dissociation from the maternal, disassociation from the female, from the feminine. So when mom came back, what happened was my 2-year-old self adapted with a defensive detachment. So my relationship with my mother has always been quite strained historically. There's always been this deep need to be seen and heard by her, and often a guilt coming from her side, which blocks her ability to actually see and hear me. So there was always this feeling of not feeling seen and heard by my mother and father. And the way that showed up in relationships is I would choose women with a great variation, a gap in empowerment, so that I can make sure that I would never be left alone. The choice of women that I would choose would be the codependent type that were exceedingly insecure and needy, so that my ego and my wounded child did not have to cope with the uncomfortable feelings of being abandoned again. Let me know if that resonates with you at all. That's exactly how I showed up in relationships. And I showed up in relationships with a very dense ego, constantly needing to be seen and heard and loved and admired by everyone. That's why I talk about trigger proof, because I have historically been so perturbed, so influenced by externals, seeking validation and praise and avoiding criticism. Can't handle criticism, constantly need to be liked. And so if that wasn't going according to plan, my ego defenses would go up and there would be a complete block of feelings, and intimacy was shot through the door. So it took me going through a divorce, several infidelities. Why? Because I needed to make sure that I had my feminine bases covered. If this one didn't work out, I needed to have 2 or 3 others in the background to make sure that I wasn't going to be abandoned. And so there was a lack of trust. I didn't trust love. So what ended up happening was I would have this sexual compulsion. I would try to fulfill those needs of the feminine bond through the sexual impulse, which completely blocked intimacy because it was based on a performance and making myself extremely valuable to the other person, and it really wasn't about deep, intimate connection. So I'm on a journey of healing all of that, and these are all my discoveries on my recovery. And I love sharing the journey of how to transform it. And it really comes down to this. And we got Dr. Russell Kennedy, who is the anxiety MD and neuroscientist, who really helped me put all of this together, this new model of transformation from intimacy disorders, sexual impulses, infidelity, all of that. We're dealing with that on a daily basis with our clients who are in this limbo state because of an infidelity. And what we're showing is the path to victory. And here's what it is. You've heard me talk about it on previous episodes, but I call it the intimacy upgrade. And here's basically how we do it. It's several different stages, the path to victory is several different parts to it. You must un-F your nervous system. So nervous system regulation, watch, I believe, episode 2, where we go deep into the stages of nervous system regulation. If you don't regulate your nervous system, talk therapy is a bunch of BS. It's just not gonna work because you're completely in a state of alarm. You have no ability to empathize and connect with yourself, so you have no ability to empathize and connect with another. The next part of it is you must I had to clear my past victim stories. I thought I had cleared them, but apparently I still was holding on to resentment towards mom, towards dad for not feeling seen, heard, loved, all of the things that should have happened that didn't go according to my desire. So I want you to think about that, what that would be like for you. What's the state of your nervous system right now as far as anxiety levels go, sleep goes, your digestive system goes? Your nervous system, if it's dysregulated or effed up, as I like to call it, you have no ability to regulate. You get triggered very easily, and you're constantly seeing your past everywhere. It's everywhere. You'll see an event that happens at a supermarket, and you'll get triggered, but it's not about what's happening in the supermarket. It's because of a past victim story that you haven't yet completed. But when you get these two parts right and you clear those, you develop a sense of presence. You're now able to be with life. You're able to be in your body. People start commenting and saying, you know what? I feel that you're way more present now. You're not as distracted as you used to be. I was constantly distracted. The next part is, which is one of the most challenging, is to dance with your dark passenger. Your ego, which protects that wounded inner child, to learn how to reconnect with him or her, because at the age of 10, 15, 18, whenever you experience that first trauma, you dissociated from yourself and decided in that moment that you no longer mattered. And so everything that you see around you is validating the fact that you don't see and hear yourself. So learning how to dance with your dark passenger, the ego witnessing, calling out the ego, being vulnerable. It takes a great deal of vulnerability and authenticity to do that. But when you get these two parts right, you clear the past victim story and you learn how to dance with that dark passenger, you develop a sense of understanding. Understanding of not only that other person who you've been going to collisions with, but you understand yourself. You're not judging and blaming and alienating and shaming yourself. Jabs, as my good friend Dr. Russell Kennedy loves to call it. You judge yourself, you abandon yourself, you blame yourself, and you shame yourself when you dissociate and you get triggered. But when you get these parts right, you develop a sense of understanding and a compassion and empathy towards your wounded inner child. And that is the access point to this thing we're all searching for, which is self-love. And when you learn how to dance with your dark passenger and you un-F your nervous system, people start commenting that you're way more authentic. You can now take off the mask and you don't have to pretend to be somebody that you're not anymore. You can take what you've been ashamed about all your life and you present it to the public without a feeling of shame and guilt because you understand your own innocence. It takes some work to get there, but there is nothing more important for your health, for your relationships, and your business, because every business problem that you're ever having, especially if you're an entrepreneur, basically is a personal problem. So we're talking about a global epidemic here that affects your business, your relationships, and your health. And it's all accessible through the intimacy upgrade. Now, what's very important in this whole game as well is to learn how to, because I didn't know how to do this, to have empathy, empathic communication, not just with yourself, but with the other person. And if you learn properly how to have that level of empathy, you can now neutralize somebody else's trigger. It's very powerful. But first, you got to learn the skills of doing it for yourself. And it's very, very effective. And then the hallmark of this, it's not possible. You see on our last episode where we talk about why one-on-one therapies don't really work. Why? Is because we need commitment to get there, because it's not going to be easy. You're going to have many hiccups along that path. So you need to be committed. And we require community. because we heal in community. Healing is not just a linear process, it's up and down. And by witnessing other people get vulnerable and sharing their truth, I can then see myself in that person, and we use the social engagement system and co-regulation to actually help heal our nervous systems together. Because that's how we were back in the olden days. We had tribes, we had communities, but because of technology, we've now isolated from each other. And so getting back into community rather than just the one-on-one model. And one-on-one therapies are necessary, but it's really important for us to do it as a community. And when you get all of that right, the hallmark, why are we doing this? What's the whole point? What's the whole point of this show? The whole point of learning how to be trigger-proof is self-love and love of other. Because every problem that you're having, that I noticed, patients coming in with health problems, we're dealing with a self-love issue. We're blocking love from others because they were blocking love from themselves. And this is where we have intimacy disorders and infidelity and problems expressing emotional truth. So I'd like to invite Dr. Russell Kennedy to talk a little bit about why that's so important for us to, here, hold on, let me just put on my little,
okay.
Dr. Russell, welcome. I'm grateful that you're here. And I'd love to hear from you from a neuroscience perspective. Why are we so afraid to have intimacy? What is intimacy and why are we so freaking afraid? And what's the impact on our health?
Well, I think we're really afraid to have it because maybe we didn't get it when we were younger. I mean, there's no such thing as perfect parents. You know, we get good enough parents a lot of the time, but a lot of our parents didn't know, like you, and I really appreciate your vulnerability, Nima, and sharing your trials and tribulations with your mom. I have had issues with my mother as well, trying to get close to her because she grew up in the war. She grew up in a very kind of distant family where they loved, you knew they loved the kids because they put foods in their mouths and shelter over their head, but there wasn't really any affection and love and that kind of thing. So as a result, my mother has learned to sort of mistrust love and not be comfortable with it. And I think your mom is kind of like not the same circumstances, but a similar way. So when you get that reflected as a child, you start thinking, well, what's wrong with me? What's wrong? So from a neuroscience perspective, we have this thing called the social engagement system in our brain. And if that doesn't develop, if we don't get that loving, constant connection from our caregivers, we start wondering what's wrong with us. And then we start judging, abandoning, blaming, shaming ourselves. And then when we become split from ourselves, we have a hard time connecting. So when we get into relationships when we're older, they're full of compulsions, they're full of problems because we never really learned how to connect.
Yeah.
And in these days, there's such a pressure cooker that we live in now with Facebook and Instagram. And like, it's just so ubiquitous, the pressure to be these things that we aren't and to pretend that we are these things. And it's so difficult to keep that up.
And here's the crazy part about it. If I can't connect with my partner, well, I'm just going to go sleep with that person because I feel like I can connect with them much better because I don't know how to express myself. I don't know how to reveal my deep feelings to my partner. I don't know how to express my emotional truth. I don't know I'm afraid to share my wants and needs with my partner. So what are we going to do? What's the most readily available thing? I can just swipe left or there's websites dedicated to people who just don't really feel like the discomfort of actually confronting their feelings. So why don't I, instead of getting uncomfortable and vulnerable, why don't we just go over here? And now this becomes a compulsion because we're afraid to just tell the truth. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, also we get this hit of oxytocin, right? Like if you've been with somebody for 3, 5, 10, 15 years, that hit of oxytocin isn't going to be as strong as
the dopamine as well.
Dopamine too, but oxytocin typically, and dopamine and serotonin on all the neurotransmitters. but it's so seductive for us, especially if we lived and died by the sword as children, where we had to get these highs and lows, or there was these highs and lows in our childhood. We replicate that in our adulthood. So we think this hit with this new person is going to be so great. And it is typically for the first little while, but then you get used to that person and then they settle into the same thing, and the cycle starts all over again. So that thing about defensive detachment is that we defend ourselves to protect ourselves, but then we have to go outside into kind of an addiction or compulsion or whatever you want to call it, to rev up our brain chemicals so that we get that feeling like we're alive, we're feeling life, but we're just causing more and more problems because we're not feeling life from a grounded, functional perspective. We're doing it from the next hit. It's from the next hit.
It's from the next hit externally. And so nothing I ever attempt to achieve externally will ever be enough. And here's the other crazy part about it. If we don't actually take part in doing the necessary inner work to regulate the nervous system, to clear the past victim story, to learn how to dance with that wounded inner child and ego, what we call ego witnessing, then we're constantly seeking it outside of us. And it all comes back to self-love, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's the whole thing about if you don't witness history, you repeat it. And so many of my friends, so many people I see repeat the same patterns from their old childhood over and over and over again, hoping that this time it's going to be different. And it never is, but they keep doing it. And that's almost the definition of addiction. So yeah, it's fine. Your relationship with other people can be no better than your relationship with yourself. So it's finding that intimacy with yourself. And really, that's, I think, what you teach. That's what I try and teach, and we teach together, is how can you develop this intimacy with yourself so that you don't need that compulsive, you don't need that hit of brain chemicals anymore. You give it to yourself, and you give it to yourself on demand. So you're not at this victim like, oh my God, is this person going to like me? Or is that person going to like me? Or is my Instagram picture going to be good? Like, that stuff is just driving us crazy.
Yeah. And what happens is intimacy with the self, what I discovered in my healing journey, was my ability to sit in my discomforting feelings that I used other people, relationships, women, sex, pornography, pot, food, whatever I used to actually prevent me from feeling them. Is intimacy basically means deeply connecting with feelings. And that's pretty much what stops us from being able to be intimate with ourselves and then being able to be intimate with our partners, isn't it?
Yeah, because we never get used to being with ourselves. If you're never comfortable with yourself, you're always looking for something outside of you, and you'll find it. You'll find it and you'll get that hit, but it will never satisfy you. And that's the definition of addiction, a temporary satisfaction with no long lasting fulfillment. So we just keep hitting. So if you can give yourself that, and I know it sounds kind of Pollyanna and new age and that, but it really is true, is the farther you can come towards yourself, the more you realize that you don't need those external things. And I see this in you. I've seen this in you quite profoundly over the last 4 to 6 months, is that you're just, I can insult you. I mean, I think the last or two episodes ago, I said something to you and said, "Oh, I'm not a narcissist," and then you cut me off, which was hilarious. But I've seen you. I feel the camber in your voice. Like, I know that you are getting more connected to yourself. I can see your behaviors where you're not searching outside for things so much anymore, and you're realizing, and you're getting this overview, this ability to see. It's like, you know what? If I got that, it's really not going to be what I think it is. So I can see you really moving into yourself. And it's just like, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your ability to do a show like this and express, your vulnerabilities so that the rest of us can do the same. So thank you so much, Nima. I think you're really doing a great thing for people doing this.
Brother, I want to say I couldn't have done it without you. And thank you for that. And the first question that I get a lot, I'll get some mail. It's like, you're a chiropractor. Okay, what the hell are you doing talking about this stuff? Like, what right do you have? And it's interesting, and I want your take on this as well, is I would see patient after patient coming in with neck pain, with dizziness and vertigo, with digestive problems, with anxiety, and I'm adjusting them. And as I'm going through my own healing journey, I'm getting to know my patients. I just love to talk and I'm a people person. And 100% of the time when they were coming in, it was an intimacy disorder. It was a dissociation from self. It was unresolved trauma. It was emotional wounds that they didn't want to deal with because it's too freaking painful and scary to go into those feelings.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with them. Just fix my neck, doc. And I would just be like, look, I'm wasting this person's time. I want to go deeper. I want to go upstream. And so this journey of evolution of me as a practitioner has led me in front of a camera teaching, because doctor actually means teacher. And so it was, I believe it was 1 year ago. It was 50 weeks ago where I met you. I met you 50 weeks ago. And my first opinion of you was like, oh, here's another medical quack. Medical, whatever. And when I discovered that you were going through the exact same realizations and your message is pretty much bang on with what I'm talking about, I was just like mind blown to see that a medical doctor was going through the same thing. My question is, would you see patients coming in? Because this is the big thing that I see here. I wrote it down: anxiety, digestive issues, and hormonal issues. That they're going to the medical doctor, trying to get a prescription, and there's a prescription for each one of these things. But we got to go upstream. Could you see the same thing in your medical practice?
Oh yeah, especially, the thing about the difference between our practices is that I could prescribe medication. So I could prescribe antidepressants. I didn't like to, but it is one of those things where in some cases it can be life-saving. But the thing is about when I prescribe antidepressant medications for the people that they work in, and a lot of them they don't, but the people they work in, after I give them the medication that numbs them out, there's no real need for them anymore to go into the fact that their brother used to molest them from the time they were 11 till they're 13, or their father used to beat them, or their mother was an alcoholic. There's no point in them going upstream and actually unearthing those old traumas and dealing with them and becoming, one with yourself, as kind of woo as that sounds, and being connected. There's no impetus for them to do that. So
it's a convenient way of actually avoiding the inner work, which is damn uncomfortable, which is heroic, which is why I love working with the people that we work with, because they're heroes to go back and actually address those things. But it's easier to just, take a pill and just numb yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what happens to your health overnight?
And I think people do go through a stage of that numbness. Like, I think you need that sort of stage of numbness before you get to the point where you go, enough is enough. Like, I just can't deal with this anymore. I can't deal with the fact that, every month I'm going back and forth. Should I divorce? Should I stay with this? Should I stay in my career? And that's why I love the people that come into your program, the overview, because they're ready. Like, they've gone through that numbing stage, 95% of them. And they're like, I really want to do something different, because the hardest thing for human beings to do is to change. And, we get used to this discomfort zone that we live in. It's not comfortable, but we don't like it. And then the people that come in.
I like that. Oh, I like that. I love that. We get used to this discomfort zone.
Absolutely. And because that's exactly what it is.
It's miserable, but it's familiar.
And that's it. And, human beings equate familiarity with security. So what was ever familiar for you as a child, no matter how bad that was, you will tend to replicate that in your adulthood. So you would pick partners who needed you, who were dependent, which is kind of what your mom did. I did the same thing. My mom was kind of dependent on me, so I did that same thing. And then after a while, you start getting this overview and you look at things and go, I want to do something different, but you can't see the label from inside the bottle. You need someone from outside of you to kind of say, hey, and this is what a year and a half, what basically I did for you, because someone did this for me 5 years ago and got me into a more of a feeling state where I didn't need these external things so much. And I think that's where you're progressing. And I think that's where the greatest teaching is the people that have been there and that have got out or getting out and are sharing that with other people. So that's where I think that, you're a natural teacher in that. And us natural teachers tend to go through a lot of shit because, you can't take something like, I see these coaches out there that are 25 years old that are teaching about relationships. It's like, What do you know about relationships at 25 that you haven't learned from a book? I mean, and some people have gone through significant trauma, but it's those of us who have gone through significant trauma and have seen the way out and have gone through the numbing stage and have gone through the work stage and are able now to sort of say, this is what did work, this is what didn't work. So this is what helps me, and this is what you're doing, and this is why I'm really proud of you.
Brother, thank you so much. I know you have an appointment to head off to. I'm grateful you jumped off and contributed to the conversation. Your contribution is so needed and welcome. So thanks, brother.
And so is yours, bud. And so is yours. Keep doing the show. It's fantastic. It really is great.
I'm having a good time. I'm having fun.
Okay, buddy.
Thanks, dude.
We'll talk soon.
All right. So there you have it. Very interesting. Lisa just asked, can you expand on how these things affect autoimmune? Autoimmune is an interesting one. Autoimmune is the cells of your body attacking itself. So whenever you're dealing with an autoimmune issue, you want to ask the question, where do I have guilt? Where am I attacking myself? And these are past victim stories and shame stories. So these two are part of your intimacy upgrade of clearing those. It's critical that you list all of the things that you're ashamed about, you feel guilt about, because those are the things that are self-attacking. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay, because I took off my things. Is there a thumbs up? Okay, good. So that's the key, is that autoimmune, we're talking anxiety, digestive, hormonal, autoimmune, cancer, it's all the same. This was something I came up with over 18 years of seeing patients, and then my own recovery, my own discoveries in my recovery. So not only do I have the knowledge base, but actually I'm ashamed to say I actually have the experience of actually applying it, and I teach what I most need to learn. And so a great example of this, I'd love to introduce you to a very special guest. Her name's Kyla, and it was January where she came, she literally walked up to me after a talk, and can you hear me? I put these in. She literally walked up to me after a talk and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I was like, "No." And so it started a conversation which over the past few months has now led to her being an actual guest on the show, because what we're talking about is actually relevant to what's going on with her. So it is my pleasure to welcome Kyla. Kyla, can you believe that you're actually sharing like this? If I told 4 months ago that that day when you came up to me like a frightened turtle and I told you, we're just going to be on a live show and you're going to be sharing what you just went through over the past few months, would you have believed me?
Not a chance. Absolutely not a chance. I was terrified just to be there in January. So to be doing this right now is pretty big.
That's huge. So Kyla, can you share a little bit about what you came up and told me in January? Because this was really important. I got to share this story with you, is because that was probably the greatest validation for me, because it wasn't easy for me to leave my chiropractic practice to talk about emotional wounds. It wasn't easy at all. In fact, I had a lot of resistance, especially from my parents, who were like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You are not a psychologist. Go get a psychology degree." And I'm like, I really want to go upstream with people. And when you came up to me that day, it was like mind-blowing for me. It was like, okay, good, keep going with it, because I doubted myself big time. Do you want to share what you told me?
Yeah, absolutely. So 8 years ago, it would have been the spring of 2011, I was a patient of yours, a chiropractic patient. I had come in to see you 2, 3, 4 times. I was having problems with my neck and my lower back, sort of the typical reasons you go to see a chiropractor. And it might have been the second visit that you started asking me questions about stresses or traumas in my life or things from my past that I wasn't facing. And instantly it triggered that part of me that didn't want to share anything, especially with you having, being face to face with a stranger. But the other part of it was, I'm not here for that. You're a chiropractor. I'm here for you to make me feel better. And I don't want to talk to you about my own personal things that I'm dealing with right now. So after the 3rd or 4th visit, I said, no, that's it. Enough is enough. I'm not interested in what you're trying to sell me, which ultimately now I see obviously very differently. Yep. So 8 years go by.
That happens a lot, by the way, in my career. By the way, that happened a lot in my chiropractic career. People were very put off by the fact that I was like, do you want to? And I get it now. Maybe my approach wasn't as soft as it is now, but it put you off, didn't it?
It did. It was, it came off a bit aggressive, but not so much aggressive as it was unexpected, because that sort of information from a chiropractor was really, it sort of came out of left field for me. I wasn't expecting it. So it was just a bit off-putting at the time.
I get it.
And so, so 3 months later, I was divorced. Obviously, I was dealing with a fair amount of stresses, and I had past traumas in my life that I chose not to join you in discussing. And somehow, January of this year, you were put back in my path. The universe decided, hey, you know what? Here's another chance for you. And so my stepson invited me to a business talk that you were doing in January. And I fully intended on learning something about running my own business at that time, but your talk really hit me in a completely different way. It was like, first of all, I walked in and went, holy shit, that guy used to be my chiropractor. And then I realized that there was so much more that I could learn from what you had to share. And so we left that night. My son and my husband were there with me, and we all walked away having learned quite a bit. We really resonated with what you were sharing. And my stepson called me the next day and said, would you like to join me on Sunday? You and Dr. Russell were doing a talk on the neuroscience and relationships. And so I thought, okay, here we go. Universe is telling me I need to be there, so I'm going. And I was terrified. And so I did. I walked straight up to you that day and I said, you probably don't remember. It was quite some time ago, but I thought you were a nutcase trying to get in my head, and it wasn't my thing at the time, and I was not ready.
Which is pretty accurate. Pretty accurate statement that you made at the time. But let's keep moving on.
Yeah, but I told you that I was obviously interested in what you had to say now, and I was ready to sit and talk. And you did an overview with me that day, and it was extremely eye-opening for me. It changed the way I thought about my past. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The overview method is the tool that I distilled from John DeMartini's work and Byron Katie's work to help you clear a past victim story. So you were the one that put your hand up, and we had you come up, and I took you through my process, through your process, and we completely changed the story about where you were as a child, and it opened something up for you, didn't it?
In a huge way. I had never looked at my life with gratitude and appreciation for the things that have made me who I am. It changed how I looked at myself, how I looked at my mom, how I looked at the relationships that I have in my life. And I mean, it's brought me to where I am now. It made such a huge difference that I just wanted more. I am so tired of living this life that I've been living for 40 years. So
tell me about that life that you lived. What were your presenting symptoms? Because there's a lot of stuff going on, right? Because this blockage of intimacy, this story about your past, this inability to connect with yourself and have intimacy with your partner was showing up in your physical health. What was going on? Tell me about the 40 years. What was life like for you before?
Through my teens, I used drugs to numb myself. So for a few years, I was just numbing as much as I possibly could. I ended up in a position where I went to rehab and I cleaned myself up. And I didn't fully clear the stories that I had. There was still a lot of it floating around in my head. And so I spent the next several years on medication that took the place of the numbing for the drugs for me. So I was on anxiety meds for 17 years. I was taking
anxiety meds for 17 years.
Yeah.
And what was your digestive system like?
I've been suffering probably since I was about 19 or 20 with digestive issues. In the past 3 years, I've been suffering from diverticulitis flare-ups every 4 to 6 months.
So that's an inflammatory bowel condition, right? The diverticulitis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awful.
What else?
Just awful. My relationships suffer. Listening to you and Russ talk about the patterns. So, you get into a relationship and things are great for a little while and everything seems to be fine and you're really communicating well and your intimacy is on point. And then the old habits kick in.
The triggers come up and your patterns of dissociating came up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So divorced and now I am remarried and we've been together for 7 years and I'm starting to see the same patterns. The last couple of years it's been the same sort of thing, and so now disconnecting on an intimate level with the most important or one of the most important relationships in my life, and also seeing the effects that it has on my children. So it's not just me that's affected by.
You could see it. You could see it kind of spilling over to the kids. And you're just like going, holy crap, they're following my footsteps.
Yes. And I see all of me in them. So I know that I'm an instrument in the environment that I've created. And so I want it to end with me. I'm ready for this to be the last of it and create a better life for my kids, create, coping mechanisms and the ability for them to live a joyful life. Beautiful. Yeah.
And so disconnection in your partner, your health was crap, anxiety and on medication, your digestive system wasn't really working. It was stomach pain pretty much every night, right?
Yeah, every night.
And so then you turned to me and you basically said, okay, I'm ready. And so can I ask you this question? Because there's people watching right now who can totally relate to you. Let me know in the comment section if you can relate to Kyla, because Kyla, you're not alone. This is like an epidemic. And we tend in the medical system to go, oh, this is a thyroid problem, and this is a digestive problem, and this is an anxiety problem. But in reality, it's one cause. It's a disconnection from self. It's a complete dissociation from who you are, a lack of self-love, lack of presence, lack of authenticity, lack of understanding, victim story from the past, holding on to guilt and shame. And so what was the biggest obstacle for you? There's time. I don't have the time. I don't have the money to invest in this. These are all, the usual excuses that we have. But in reality, what was the real, obstacle for you to go there? What's the most scariest thing about it? Just tell the truth about it. What was the scariest thing?
It was my own fear, my fear of being intimate, my fear of being seen for all the pieces of me, who I truly am, and feeling like I might be judged by others because I have spent my whole life judging myself for it.
Yeah, shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
So ultimately, the reason why I wanted to, this is why I want to share this, because Kyla, what you're sharing is pretty much universal. The shame of who I am. If I took off my mask and exposed who I really am and what I really did, then nobody's going to love me. Then my little 2-year-old is going to be alone, and that means death. So instead, I'm going to put on a mask and hide from that. And what we do here is we create a safe space to take that mask off.
Yes, you do.
So
yes, you do.
Can you explain what that process was like for you to learn how to take off that mask and to share your shame and to uncover the parts of you that you didn't want to look at and the results that have happened?
I think for everyone, that first step is the scariest one. So when I first joined with the community and I started to listen to other people share what they were dealing with and what they were going through and how they were feeling, instantly it made me more comfortable. So you've talked about this before, I've been going to therapists since I was 14 years old. I've done every different one-on-one therapy that there is, and nothing's really ever helped. So the difference that I have now from then is the fact that there are people around me who have felt the same, been through the same, or worse. They'll listen to my story without judgment. I'm loved, I'm accepted, I'm made to feel comfortable no matter how nervous or uncomfortable I might be. It's a completely different feeling. So taking that first step is always a little bit scary, but as soon as you know how well you're received, it makes it so much easier. And of course, with you sharing your experiences and your humanity, your vulnerability, it makes it so much easier for the rest of us to be okay with not being okay.
Yeah, it's huge. That that just got me right there. Thank you. Because it's not
Right in the
easy.
feels.
Roll right in the field.
Love you.
Give me a moment. Yeah, because it's not easy, is it? To
No.
take off the mask, but that's our journey. And Brene Brown, I watched her documentary, her thing again yesterday, is that choosing courage over comfort. And the people who have fulfilling lives are what she would describe as wholehearted individuals. Wholehearted, wholeness, healing means to make whole, which means all feelings, all emotional truths, even the discomforting ones, even the shameful ones that you don't want to admit. That's why I love doing this work so much. And that's why I left my full-time chiropractic practice, because I wanted to access true healing. So my question to you is this. So it's been a couple months that you've been at this game, doing the intimacy upgrade, learning the empathic communication. You've been committed and you've had a community by your side. What's been the results in your life? What's changed for you as far as health goes and relationships?
Oh, health-wise. Yeah, health-wise, it's huge, actually. I didn't share with anyone until just a couple of weeks ago, but I've actually stopped taking my anxiety medication entirely. I've tried to do this. Several times in the last 17 years, and my head and my heart were just not ready for it. I couldn't make it through. So without the community, without what you're doing, I would not be able to say that I've been off my meds for 2.5 months. My husband actually said he wouldn't have known if I didn't tell him. So that is huge, absolutely huge. I have not had any stomach issues in the last almost 4 months, which is also a huge deal because, like we said, it was almost every night that I was going to bed with a stomach ache. My relationship with my husband is getting better. It's a work in progress. You know, you say it all the time.
Yeah.
We have to choose all day, every day. This is a choice, right? So we're working hard, but also very good news. My husband and my son are joining me to some extent on this journey. And so they're seeing the leaps and bounds that I've made in my progress, and it's piqued interest in both of them. So I'm very excited that my 18-year-old son may be able to take these kind of steps early on in his life so that he is not where I am at 40. It's big.
It's beautiful.
Really big. Yeah.
Kyla, thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much for being honest and sharing your story and getting vulnerable. How do you feel? I mean, I know you were nervous before this conversation. How do you feel now after sharing?
Way good. We're good.
We're good, yeah. And I'm doing a talk tonight in West Vancouver, and we're going to see you and your son and husband there tonight. I look forward to that. But I really just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for the courage to take the leap and to recognize that what you were doing wasn't working, and to have your faith and trust and confidence in us and our team, Kim and Eilina and Dr. Russ and everybody else in the community. It's a privilege to be able to wake up and do what we do. It's not always easy. There are challenges for us as well in this journey, and just watching these transformations is evidence for us just to keep going and sharing the process and trying to teach it to as many people as possible. So thank you so much, Kyla. God bless.
Thank you. I couldn't do it without you.
Is there anything that you want to say to somebody watching who can relate to all this, who's been struggling with their relationship with themselves and it's spilling over to their kids and everybody else? What do you have to say to them?
It's natural to be nervous. It can be scary to be vulnerable, but the payoff is so worth it. Just take the leap. Decide that you don't want the life that you've been living anymore, and know that there is joy on the other side.
Thank you so much, my dear. Kyla, see you later, hon. Okay, beautiful. There's a poem that I wrote about this entire thing that really resonated with everything that I was going through as a chiropractor. And basically it was when you get a diagnosis, right? It goes, so you've just been diagnosed and you're feeling relief. You can finally label all your pain and your grief. You're wondering what's wrong. Now you can know it's no longer a mystery why these symptoms won't go. But what you do from here will make the greatest impact, spiral down further, or set you on the right path. When you're stuck on a label, life can throw you for a loop. You'll grow tired of a system that keeps you from the truth. The power to heal lies directly in your hands. Cells, spine, and soul must awaken from the trance, popping the meds and taking a chance, trying to find an answer in this insurance dance. The pills and the potions are becoming a joke, leave you stuck, disempowered, and headed for broke, even if you are one of them skeptical folks. The diagnosis isn't who you are, folks. The diagnosis isn't who you are, folks. And so that sums up beautifully what we just experienced with Kyla there. Please, if you know somebody that needs to hear this message, tag them, share them with your group, your tribe. My goal is to help as many people as possible get access to this information so they can actually heal from within and not be going outside in approaches, whether it's a pill or a relationship or approval externally. The answer always is within. And when we go within, the outer world will reflect what's inside. Because if we don't do this, if you don't get this right, what happens is, as Kyla shared, it spills over onto the children, and those inherited family traumas start to spill over, and you pass it on down, and it continues. So this work isn't just about you. You're healing your future generations, and you're actually healing your past generations as well. My relationship with my parents, as it continues to evolve, has gotten leaps and bounds better simply because I took on this work. And I truly believe that if you take it on as well, you can transform not only yourself, not only your children, but your relationships and heal their hearts as well, which is a benefit for everybody. It just takes the courage to get vulnerable, to understand and get comfortable being uncomfortable, become a little bit more ambitious with why you're here and what you're here to do. Are there any other questions? Let me know. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's Wednesday at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, an early morning for you Aussies and late in the evening for those of you in Europe. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Dr. Nima Rahmany, and if you have any other questions, please feel free, send me a private message. And if you want us to take a closer look at your case to see if you're the right fit for something like this, by all means, reach out, and I'm here to be able to serve you and to see if you can actually transform and if it's something that's right for you. We shall see you at the next perfect time. Thank you, Dr. Russ. Thank you, Kyla, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for participating, your emails, your questions. They're very helpful. If you haven't already, joined our Facebook group to continue the conversation, The Art of Powerful Alignment, and I'll see you at the next perfect time.